Good morning, Orchard Covenant Church. I'm so sorry that we can't gather together in our sanctuary for worship together, but I am glad that we can at least connect and gather virtually over our computers and phones this morning. There's some music posted on the website. I hope you'll take the opportunity to enjoy that and meditate on that, worship with that resource. And I want to take this opportunity to share a few words with you and reflections from Psalm 46. I know this is a difficult time, very, very trying for all of us in many different ways. So I want to share some words, some wisdom, a message from Psalm 46 that I hope is an encouragement to you and gives you some strength during these difficult times. So let's read that. If you've got a Bible, I invite you to open that up to Psalm 46 or open it up on your phone, and I will read that for us here. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear. Though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city, it shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns. The nations are in an uproar, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Come, behold the works of the Lord. See what desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I am exalted among the nations. I am exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. This is the word of the Lord. Man, isn't that powerful? I love the beginning of that psalm, and I just want to read it again. And really, this is where I'm going to focus my thoughts. This psalm begins in verse 1 and 2. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear. I wonder if you would just say that with me. If I can say that and you'll repeat that after me. I hope it's not too weird to do this by video, but will you just repeat that after me? I want you to say it. I want you to hear those words come out of your own mouth. So just repeat after me, would you? God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Let's do that again. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Just let that soak in for a moment, will you? God is our refuge and our strength. It means that we can run to God in times of trouble. We can hide ourselves in God. He will enfold us under the shadow of his wing, and he will not just give us strength, but he himself will be our strength. He's a very present help in times of trouble. It means he's present with you. You're not alone. However, this coronavirus is affecting you and the different shutdowns and social distance, however that is affecting you, you don't have to walk it alone. The scripture promises us that God is present and God will walk with you. Can you think of a time when you had to do something difficult? You had to go somewhere, even just a meeting, or you had to do something hard, and someone came with you. And that made all the difference. I think those are some of the sweetest words you can hear is, hey, I'll come with you. You don't have to go alone. I will be with you. And God is saying that to you this morning, to every one of us. You don't have to go this alone. I will be with you. I will be a very present help in time of trouble. And the psalmist goes on to say after that, therefore we will not fear. We will not fear. You know, I think that it's natural to feel fear in a time like this. Feel a fear of the uncertainty, fear of illness, fear of losing a job, fear of the downturn in the economy. It's natural to feel fear. I think it's interesting that one of the most common phrases we hear repeated in the Bible over and over again is do not be afraid. Why do we hear that so many times? Well, because there's so many times that it's natural to be afraid. The angels show up and people are afraid and they say, don't be afraid, because there are so many situations and circumstances where it's a natural human response to be afraid. And we're in one of them. It's natural to be afraid. And it's okay if you're struggling with fear and anxiety. And that promise that that you do not be afraid, or even that statement of the psalmist, we will not fear. I mean, that's a little bit of in spite of our fear, we won't let that rule us. We won't act out of fear. We won't give into our fear. Why? Because God is with us. We're not walking through this alone. It reminds me of Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the darkest valleys of life, I will not be afraid. Why? Because you are with me, because God is with me. That very present help. God's presence makes all the difference as we walk through these hard days. So I hope that you remember that God is a very present help. He's walking with you, and you don't have to walk these hard days alone. And I love how realistic the Bible is. It goes on to say, this psalm, we will not be afraid even though the earth should change, even though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble. I mean, what the psalmist is describing is, earthquakes and storms of the sea. It's mountains even tumbling into the sea. The psalmist is describing the world being turned upside down. The psalmist is describing things just going totally haywire, and what you thought was up one minute is down the next. And here he's saying, even though the world gets turned upside down, we don't need to be afraid, because God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear or give in to fear. And I tell you, these days are so strange, aren't they? I mean, it does feel like the world is being turned upside down with all these changes happening. It's like nothing I've experienced before in my lifetime, with schools being closed for at least a couple of weeks, with stores being closed, with people being told to work from home, with a lot of people who don't have work anymore because they worked at stores or restaurants and they're losing their jobs. People are concerned about the economy and unemployment and what's going to happen in the weeks and the months ahead. It does feel like the world is being turned upside down. And yet, in God's word, we hear this psalmist say, even when the world gets turned upside down, we don't need to fear, because God is a very present help. He's our refuge. And He will walk with you. He will walk with us together. Listen, I know all of us are feeling a lot of different things. Some of us are feeling really concerned about the virus itself and getting sick. Some of you are in that vulnerable category of being over 70 years old or having other health conditions that make you very vulnerable to the virus, where to get the virus would be very dangerous for you. And so it's natural to be afraid about that. Others are afraid about just, managing the day-to-day. The kids aren't in school. We've got to manage the kids. Some of you are managing a different work schedule, or working from home, or not working at all, trying to make ends meet and pay the bills. And I just want to assure you that you are not alone, that we as a church, we are one body in Christ. And part of being the church is caring for each other in hard times, and looking out for each other. And it also means we've got a God that walks through this with us. I think of Jesus. I can't say that this is going to be easy. I think we've got some hard weeks ahead of us, to be honest. Things are going to be hard, just both with the illness and the things that everybody is doing to try to slow the spread of the virus. It's going to be hard, brothers and sisters, but you don't have to go it alone. We've got each other, and we've got the Lord who is our strength. Jesus said this. He didn't promise we'd never have problems. In fact, he promised the opposite. In John chapter 16, he says, in this world you will have troubles. But what did he say after that? But don't be afraid. Take heart, take courage, because I have overcome the world. Friends, it will be hard. There will be difficult days ahead, but Jesus said he has defeated. He's overcome the world. He's overcome sin. He's even overcome death itself. We don't even need to be afraid of death, because Jesus has defeated death, and he's given us that victory over death as well. So even though we experience trouble, we don't need to be afraid, because Jesus has already given us, he's won the victory, and he gives us the victory over everything that could possibly come our way. Listen, these restrictions are hard. It's hard not to be able to gather for worship. It's hard not to be able to gather with friends and go to the usual places. I know a lot of people are just experiencing a lot of disappointment and sadness about events and things that are being canceled, things you were looking forward to that you're going to miss. And I know that that's disappointing and that's hard. And I'm praying for you. Whatever this is like for you, I just want you to know that I'm praying for you, and you're not alone. Your brothers and sisters are here for you. And I know it's hard to say that when we can't gather on Sunday morning in our church building for worship. But listen, there's going to be some things about this that are hard, but you know what? There's some opportunities too. There's some opportunities for us to learn some new ways of being the church. The church is not a building. You know that. The church is not a building. The church is a people. The church is a people who belong to God. And so we're going to learn some new ways to be the church in the weeks ahead. However long this lasts, it might be a couple of weeks, it might be a lot of weeks, but we're going to learn some new ways to be the church in creative ways. A lot of us have really depended on Sunday morning gatherings. That's our opportunity to be fed spiritually and to connect with other people. Listen, I know we're going to miss that, but I just want to encourage you to find some creative ways to connect with one another and to feed yourself spiritually and get fed spiritually. Call one another. I know Mike Foster, the chair of the church council, he's been doing such a good job in sending out emails. He's encouraging you just to call one another, and I second that. Just call people, check on each other. It feels so good to know that you're being remembered by other people, that someone else is praying for you. So call a couple of people, especially people who might be in the vulnerable category, or people who just might be lonely, people that this could be hard on. Give them a call and check in with each other. There's also opportunities to There's some ways that we can do prayer calls together, conference calls, even video conferencing. Some of you know how to do that. And I encourage you to think about that creatively, to gather together. And finally, there's ways to actually, it's okay to gather in small groups. The governor's rule, at least right now, is not to gather in groups of more than 25. There's also advice not to gather in groups of more than 10. And so I encourage you to do what makes sense for you in your situation. Especially if you're in a high-risk category, please be careful. But all of us need to be careful, and it's really out of love for neighbor. Even if you're young and healthy, we want to not be part of spreading this virus out of love for others who are vulnerable. That's part of what it means to be a Christian, is even if we're not at risk ourselves, we think about other people who can be at risk. So we don't want the disease to spread too fast and overwhelm the hospitals and medical system. Even if we're not personally at risk, we want to be part of the solution because we're thinking about our neighbors. We're thinking about vulnerable people, and it's out of love for them that we're willing to make these sacrifices. And at the same time, if you feel safe and you're healthy enough to get with a group of people, I encourage you to do that. Don't do it if you've been sick, or if anyone in your household has a fever, or you have reason to believe you've been exposed to the virus. But if those things aren't true for you, by all means, get together with 5 or 6 other people and pray together and sing together. It's not the same as Sunday morning, but that can still be a really, really meaningful, powerful way to worship with others, encourage each other, pray together. One of you can share a reflection on some verses or just something God has been teaching you. That's the church. The church we haven't always had the luxury of meeting together on Sunday mornings. And there's places in the world where believers don't have that freedom to gather in large groups on Sunday morning. So let's be creative. Let's be flexible in the ways that we can connect with each other, the ways that we seek spiritual nourishment for ourselves. And finally, let's be creative in the ways that we love our neighbors. This is really an opportunity, brothers and sisters, because we're free from fear, right? We know that God is with us. We don't have anything to fear. Jesus has even promised us victory over death whenever that comes. And so we are free to live our lives in service and love to our neighbors. Whether it's delivering a meal, you might just need to leave it on the front porch for someone who's elderly, and you don't want to risk breaking that social distance rule. Whether it's someone who's elderly or just somebody who can need it, think about the ways that you can love your neighbors. It might be your literal neighbors, or it just might be other people that you know. I've been inspired hearing about Christians. Someone said, Christians have been dealing with epidemics and knowing how to do so in love for 2,000 years. I mean, it's true. Epidemics are pretty rare in this day and age, but in the 2nd century, in the 3rd century, in the 4th century, these waves of plagues were happening. And you know what? Christians stood out while other people were fleeing or saying this is God's judgment on you. Christians stayed and they loved their neighbors. They took care of the sick. Why? Why did they stay and take care of their neighbors who were sick? Because the love of God was in them, that's one. And also because they were free from fear. And because they were free from fear, they were able to love and serve their neighbors without fear. Now, I'm not suggesting you take foolish risks with your health, but I just want to encourage you to think about how you can love your neighbors, serve your neighbors in this time of fear, in a time of need where people will have difficulty getting food on the table. There'll be people dealing with joblessness. There will be people dealing with illness, people dealing with loneliness. You'll be experiencing some of those challenges. And God will walk with you through those. And as a church, we'll take care of each other. But also let's think of how we can take care, love our neighbors outside of the walls of the church as well. It's really, it's a difficult time. It's a challenging time. But it's also an opportunity for us to grow in what it means to be the church, and to take this opportunity to show the world around us what Christians are really made of, the love of God that's in us, freedom from fear, and the freedom from fear that gives us the freedom to love and serve others. I'm not saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying take foolish risks, okay? Especially if you're in the high risk categories. But if you're not in a high risk category and you're able to reach out to others, still keep your social distance, but whatever ways that you can to love and serve your neighbors, I encourage you to do that. It's something that Christians have done throughout the ages, and it's part of what helped spread the gospel in those early centuries, because people saw the love of the believers and the power of Christ in them that freed them from fear. The power of God's peace in the midst of turmoil and hardship. So be safe. Follow the orders. Keep your social distance. But also look for creative ways to connect with one another by phone, in small groups, maintaining social distance. And look for those opportunities to love and serve your neighbor. I will be praying for you. And I invite you to give me a call. I know I'm still getting to know most of you, but give me a call. I'm at home filming this, but when you're watching this on Sunday, I'm going to be at the church. Give me a call over at the church. I'd love to hear from you and just hear how you're doing and hear how I can pray for you. And I also invite you to come on over to the church at 1 p.m. if you're safe to do so. If you're not sick and there's no one in your home who's sick, we're going to gather in small groups. I don't know how many people will come. There may be 5 of us. There might be 45 of us. If there's a bigger number, we're going to gather in groups under 10 and just be together and pray together. It's not going to be a sermon. It's not a worship service. It's just a chance to reflect together and pray together in small groups. So I invite you to come on by the church at 1 o'clock. Give me a call at the church. If I miss your call, leave a message and I'll get back to you. I'd love to hear how you're doing, what God's doing in your life, how he's meeting you in this time, how he's being an ever-present help in this time of trouble for you. And I'd love to know how I can pray for you and other ideas that you have, inspiration that's God has given you of how we can be loving and serving each other and loving and serving our neighbors in Springfield and beyond in these challenging days. Finally, I just want to pass along one practical note I saw. Springfield Public Schools, you may already know this, but obviously they're closed. But starting Monday, they're going to have at every Springfield Public School ready-made breakfast and lunches available in parking lots. It's going to be a drive-through kind of thing. Come through in a car line. They're going to have made, ready to eat, ready to take away breakfast and lunches for students, Springfield Public School students under the age of 18. So if that would be helpful for you, I encourage you to take advantage of that. Again, every Springfield Public School will have those ready-to-eat breakfasts and lunches available between 9 a.m. and 12:30. Between 9:30 and 12:30. Every Springfield Public School for any students under the age of 18. Hang in there, brothers and sisters. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. We will not give in to fear, even if the mountains are falling into the sea, even if our world is turning upside down. God bless you. May God's peace be with you. And I'd love to hear from you. Let's be creative in the ways that we stay connected we keep worshiping and growing in Christ, and we demonstrate his love and goodness to the world. God bless you.